कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रजजन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रजजन रंजन यमुनतीरा वनचारि यमुनतीरा वनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा जय मुष्टिपाद परमहंस परव्याचार्य सदा शिष्य स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय इस कॉन्फ्रेंस का परिचय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय मुष्टिपाद परमहंस परव्याचार्य सदा शिष्य भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय जय मुष्टिपाद श्री गौर किशोरदास बाबू महाराज की जय जय मुष्टिपाद सच्चिदानंद श्री भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय जय मुष्टिपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबू महाराज की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से गौ श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य गोपाल नित्यानंद श्वेत विदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपगोपनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री गौरांगी बेंगलोर ईश्वर भगवान की जय श्री मायपुर धाम की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय गंगामयी की जय यमुनामयी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी देवी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वंदन की जय श्री हरनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवंद की जय समाविद भक्ति वृंद की जय गौर प्रेमानंद all glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tadote Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Pakir Bhavati Naishti. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 33, Text 21. Vanam Prabhurajite Patya Apatya Virahatura Jnana Tattvapi Abhunnashte Vatse Gaur Iva Vatsala Vanam Prabhurajite Patya Apatya Virahatura Jnana Tattvapi Abhunnashte Vatse Gaur Iva Vatsala Vanam Pravarajite Patya Apatya Virahathura Jnata Tattvapi Abhunnashte Vatse Gaur Iva Vatsala. Translation Devabhuti's husband had already left home and accepted the renounced order of life, and then her only son Kapila left home. Although she knew all the truths of life and death, and although her heart was cleansed of all dirt, she was aggrieved at the loss of her son, just as a cow is affected when her calf dies. A woman whose husband is away from home or has taken the renounced order of life should not be very sorry because she still has the presence of her husband representative, her son. It is said in the Vedic scriptures, Atmaiva Putro Jayate. The husband's body is represented by the son. Strictly speaking, a woman is never widowed if she has a grown son. Devahuti was not very much affected while Kapila Muni was there. But upon his departure, she was very afflicted. She grieved not because of her worldly relationship with Karda Muni, but because of her sincere love for the personality of Godhead. The example given here is that Devahuti became just like a cow who lost her calf. A cow bereft of her calf cries day and night. Similarly, Devahuti was aggrieved, and she always cried and requested her friends and relatives, please bring my son home so that I may live. Otherwise, I shall die. This intense affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although manifested as affection for one's son, is spiritually beneficial. Attachment for a material son obliges one to remain in material existence, but the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Lord, brings one elevation to the spiritual world in the association of the Lord. Every woman can qualify herself as much as Devahuti, and then can also have the Supreme Godhead as her son. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can appear as the son of Devahuti, he can also appear as the son of any other woman, provided that woman is qualified. If one gets the Supreme Lord as a son, one can have the benefit of bringing up a nice son in this world, and at the same time get promotion to a spiritual world to become the face-to-face associate of the personality of Godhead. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayambhu Pradamukam Dadati Swapadakam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Davatam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sakarjatam Sagana Raghunathan Tamsijitam Sakvarekam Sabhutam Arjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Shakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpade Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishapanistu Devi Pranamami Haripriya Panchakalpatarubhisya Kapasnadupreksa Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Rama Hare Hare Moham Karo Devachalam Pantam Bande Devarim Vetkapatam Ham Bande Shri Guru Devata Paramantam Shri Chaitanya Vishwa Hare Krishna. So here in this verse we see how Kardamuni had already left his home and her only son Kapiladev also left. And in the process, it is mentioned as to how Devahuti was a very self-realized person. And in spite of being self-realized, she was very aggrieved at the loss of her son, just as a cow is affected when her calf dies. So, material world is such that one develops attachment to one's own kith and kin, and it becomes very difficult when one becomes separated from them over a period of time, which material world is bound to happen. And here we see that Kardamuni first left, but he left his son Kapila Dev, who could be there as a protection for giving instructions to his mother Devahuti. So son is like a representative of her father. So even if son is not there, if father is not there, as long as the son is there, the mother is protected. This protection is not necessarily only a physical protection, but also spiritual protection in the form of instructions. So when Kardamuni, Kapila Dev left, then she was very much aggrieved. So there is a difference in separation in the material relationships and relationships in the spiritual perspective. So we see that generally a devotee also feels separation from the Lord. And devotees normally feel separation in various mellows with which he tastes his relationship with the Lord. The five principal rasas are Shanta Rasa, Dasya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, Vasalya Rasa, and Madhurya Rasa. And then there are many secondary rasas also. So this particular sloka mentions about Mother Devahuti enjoying relationship with Kapila Dev and the Vatsalya Rasa. That means she acted as a mother of her child Kapila Dev, who was none other than the personality of Godhead himself. Srila Prabhupada mentions as to how a devotee feels separation from the Supreme Lord, and this separation is much more than the normal separation that one feels in the material relationships. Material relationships, people might come, they may take birth, and over a period of time, they may leave the body also. And then what happens is that generally that feeling of separation lasts for some time. But after that, the feeling of separation is also lost, because that is how the material relationships are there. But however, these material relationships, one gets bound by attachment to such material relationships. One is bound in this material world. But on the other hand, when one develops a sincere relationship with the Lord in spiritual service, and then such separation, actually in our movement, it is said that separation from the Lord is much more severe than the mellow of separation is much more severe than in the union with the Lord. So here we will go through some references, some examples of how relationships develop into attachment. Now, there is a description of how this Vatsalya is extended or exhibited. It's said in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that when ecstatic love develops into relationships of parenthood and becomes steadily established, that relationship is called Vatsalya Rasa. That means the mother feels she's the mother of the child as a parent, and that relationship is firmly established. The exhibition of this Vatsalya Rasa standard of devotion service can be found in the dealings of Krishna with his devotees, who represent themselves as superior personalities like father, mother, and teacher. So one in all these three categories, that is father, mother, and teacher, the personalities, they are all on a higher platform, and they feel that they are higher than the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Now, when they feel higher, they forget that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they relate with their son just as a mother relates to a child. So there are some examples of respectful personalities who enjoy this parental affection towards Krishna. One is Mother Yashoda, who is the queen of Vrajadam. Then the second is Maharaja Nanda, the king of Raja. Then third is Mother Rohini, the mother of Balarama. Then fourth is all the elderly gopis whose sons were taken away by Lord Brahma. Next is Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. Then the other 15 wives of Vasudeva. Then Kunti, the mother of Arjuna. Vasudeva, the real father of Krishna. Sandipani Muni, Krishna's teacher. So all these are considered respective elderly personalities with parental love for Krishna. So this is in the order of superior importance. And thus we see that Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaja are considered to be the supermost of all the elderly personalities. So in terms of separation, the taste of parenthood, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj were on the highest in these categories. There is a mention in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as to how Mother Yashoda accepted Lord Krishna as her son, although he is accepted in Vedas as the king of heaven, in the Upanishads as the impersonal Brahman, in philosophy as the supreme male, by the yogis as the super soul, and by the devotees as the supreme personality of Godhead. So different personalities look at Krishna in different perspectives. So though these were different perceptions of the Lord, Mother Yashoda accepted Lord Krishna as her own son. So it is said that once Mother Yashoda addressed one of her friends like this. She said, the Nanda Maharaja, the leader of the cowherd men, worshipped Lord Vishnu along with me. And as a result of this worship, Krishna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons. That means that when the Putana demon attacked Krishna when he was a small boy, he was protected by Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj because of their worship to Lord Vishnu at some point of time. So Krishna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons also. Then there is a mention of how the twin Arjuna trees were, of course, broken due to the strong wind. And although Krishna appeared to have lifted Govardhan hill along with Balarama, I think that it is actually Nanda Maharaja who held the mountain. So Mother Yashoda feels that actually it was not Krishna who lifted the Govardhan hill, but Nanda Maharaja who lifted the Govardhan hill. Otherwise, how is it possible for a small boy like Krishna to lift such a big hill? So this is an example of how parents feel ecstasy in parental love. So this kind of parental love is generated in a devotee out of his conviction in love, that he himself is superior to Krishna. So the devotee feels that he is much more superior to Krishna, and this is a state that is generally attained by Raghavanaga Bhakti, instant love for Krishna, by those who are eternal servants of Krishna. And that they feel that without being taken care of by such a devotee, Krishna could possibly not live. So they feel that Krishna is living because of the protection given by them to the child. So one devotee therefore prays to the parents of Lord Krishna like this. He offers his prayers, let me take shelter of the elderly parental devotees of Lord Krishna. They are always anxious to serve Krishna and to maintain him, and they are always so kind to him. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto them for being so kind to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the parent of the whole universe. So devotees offer prayers that they would like to serve the parents of Krishna because they are so kind to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by giving them protection. And this Supreme Personality of Godhead is none other than the parent of the whole universe also. Similarly, there is another prayer offered by Brahmana. It says, let others worship the Vedas and the Upanishads, and let others worship the Mahabharata if they are afraid of material existence and want to become liberated from that condition. That means many worship Vedas and the Upanishads, and others worship Mahabharata. Why? Because they are afraid of material existence and want to become liberated from this material condition. But this Brahmana says, as far as I am concerned, I wish only to worship Maharaja Nanda because he is the supreme personality of, because the supreme personality of Godhead Krishna is crawling in his courtyard as his own child. So here the devotee wants to worship Nanda Maharaj because his child Krishna is crawling in his courtyard as his own child. So it is another example is given when Krishna was a baby. One day he was walking in the courtyard, holding the finger of his father. And because he could not walk steadily, it looked like as if he would fall down. But Nanda Maharaj was giving protection to his son somehow or the other and saw that he does not fall down. So all of a sudden, he said there was a few drops of tears that fell down, and Nanda Maharaj became overwhelmed with joy. So let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of King Nanda. So this is how devotees normally offer prayers to Nanda Maharaj. So another example is given when Krishna was a little grown up and he was taking care of the calves. He would often go to the forest. And when he was a little bit late in returning home, Maharaj and Nanda would actually go to a small place called a small shed. It's called Chandra Shalika. And from there, it's a place from where one can have a bird's eye view. Bird's eye view, from that point, he could have a view of all around. So he would be eagerly waiting for Krishna to return so that his eagerness would be reduced. So worrying about the late arrival of Krishna, Nanda Maharaj would remain on that Shalika until he would actually indicate to his wife, yes, Krishna surrounded by his crowded friends are coming back with the calves. So Nanda Maharaj would actually point the pick of feather on Krishna's head, and then he would inform his beloved wife how the child was pleasing. So similarly, as soon as the gopis saw their sons coming, there was a lot of inexpressible sign of parental love, and all of them became absorbed in that affection. So actually, they would first actually plan to chastise their children for stealing butter, because Krishna and all the cowherd boys would steal butter. But as soon as the sons came before their eyes, they lost all their anger and became overwhelmed with affection. So this is how even all the gopis express their affection to their cowherd boys, apart from Krishna also. And on the other hand, all the mothers' breasts would flow with milk. So out of love of affection for Krishna and their respective sons. And they all would smell Krishna's head. As generally mothers have, out of their affection to their child, they smell the head of their children. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita, there is also mention as how attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can lead one to freedom from this material world. He says that there are 5 potent forms of devotional service. So Srila Rupa Goswami mentions these as, namely, residing in Mathura, worshipping the deity form of the Lord, reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and serving a devotee. All of them are potent, that even that a small attachment for any one of them can arouse devotional ecstasy even for a neophyte. So in this respect, there is a mention that regarding worship of the deity form of the Lord. He has mentioned that, my dear friend, if you still have any desire to enjoy the company of your friends within this material world, then don't look upon the form of Krishna, who is standing on the bank of Kesigar in Vrindavana. He is known as Govinda, and his eyes are very enchanting. He is playing upon his flute, on his head there is a peacock feather, and his whole body is illuminated by the moonlight in the sky. Repeat again. He says, my dear friend, if you have a desire to enjoy material world in the company of friends, then don't look upon this form of Krishna, who is playing upon his flute on the bank of Yamuna. And the purport of this word is mentioned that if someone becomes attached to the Srimurti or deity of Krishna by worshipping him at home, he will forget all his relationship of the so-called friendship, love, and society. The point is that if one worships the deity form of the Lord at his home, he forgets all the relationship in this material world of whether it is friendship, whether it is love, or even society. Thus, it is the duty of every householder to install deities of the Lord at home and to begin the process of worshipping along with all the family members. So when one worships the deity form of the Lord along with all the family members, they all uh, develop the uh, distaste for all the temporary material relationships in this world. This will also save everyone from the unwanted activities like going to clubs, activity like going to cinema, dancing parties, etc. All such nonsense will be forgotten if one stresses the worship of deities at home. I mean, when people at home are materialistic, they develop a lot of taste for going to clubs, societies, going to parties, etc. But as soon as one develops a taste for worshipping Krishna at home in the form of deity worship, they develop a distaste for all these material activities. So there is also a mention as how attachment for a material son obliges one to remain this material existence, but the same attachment when one develops a supreme Lord brings one elevation to the spiritual world in the association of the Lord and his devotees. So we'll study some examples from Srimad Bhagavatam. In the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a mention of how there was a great king called Chitraketu. King Chitraketu, actually he had many wives, but he had no son. So they were all under lamentation for not having a son. And one time, this Angira Rishi passed by, and when he passed by the king, he asked the king about his welfare. The king was very, very morose, and therefore, by the grace of the great sage, the king's wife Tirtha gave birth to a son, who was a cause of. Now, the Rishi actually mentioned that you will get a son, but he'll be a cause of both happiness and lamentation. So the Rishi left, and later this wife, Kritadyuti, gave birth to a son. Who was now, upon the birth of the son, the king and all the residents of the palace, they all became very, very happy. Now, however, there were so many co-wives that this wife had. They all became very envious because they didn't have child, and this only one wife called Kritadyuti, she had a son. So all of them, they were out of their enviousness, they administered poison to the child. So after that, Chitraketu was very, very overwhelmed by shock at the son's death. That is the time Narada Muni and Angir Rishi came to see him. So at that time, they saw that Chitraketu was lamenting for his son, and he was telling, I will read the translation of 2 or 3 slokas as to how lamentation develops to a person who is very much attached to his son. He says, "My dear son, I'm very helpless and very much aggrieved. You should not give up my company. Just look at your lamenting father. We're all helpless because without a son, we all have to suffer the distress of going to darkest hellish regions." So here King Chitraketu is asking his son because he's expressing his lamentation. And he says, without a son like you, how can they be saved from going to darkest hellish regions? That is, normally a son is desired to be taken birth in a family because a son can offer oblations on a fire sacrifice by which one is saved from going to the planet called Poo. This Poo is a planet where normally materialistic parents go and they have to suffer a lot of hellish conditions. So a son, when he is born, he offers sacrifice oblations at the sacrifice by which the parents are saved from entering these darkest hellish regions. So here King is expressing that only hope that he had was from him to get out of these darkest regions. He says, therefore I request you, don't go any further with the merciless Yamaraj. In the next sloka, in this, he prays, "My dear son, you have slept a very long time. Now please get up. Your playmates are all calling you to play. Since you must be very hungry, please get up and suck my breast and dissipate our lamentation." This is how our mother prays. So, and further, "My dear son, I am certainly most unfortunate, for I can no longer see your mild smiling." So, as long as the son is alive, We see the child smiling, talking very nicely, and crawling and all these things, and one becomes attached. And here his mother says, "You have closed your eyes forever. I therefore conclude that you have been taken from this planet to another, from which you will not return. My dear son, I can no longer hear your pleasing voice." Generally, parents get attracted to the pleasing voice of the child. Accompanied by his wife, who was just lamenting for his dead son, the king began crying very loudly, with an open mouth, being agreed. As the king and queen lamented, all the male and female followers also joined them in crying. And because of this sudden accident, everyone in the kingdom were also as good as unconscious. Because the child was the son of a great king, everyone, the followers and the citizens of the kingdom also became very unconscious. That is the time when Angira Rishi and Narada Muni comes, that they explain that the relationship between father and son is not factual. It is simply a representation of the illusory energy. So here the rishis come and they explain. Actually, they wake up this dead child and ask him to speak about self-realization. The child wakes up by their mercy and asks, which father and mother are you talking about? So this is what mentioned here. It says that Narada Muni explained that relationship between father and son is not factual. It is simply a representation of the illusory energy of the Lord. And further says that this relationship did not exist before and nor will it stay in the future. So whatever we see in this material world, our children, our wife, our daughters, our sisters, all that we see in this world, they are all temporary relationships only for a particular lifetime. In the next birth, they may be children of somebody else, they may be parents for somebody else. So this is a temporary relationship in one lifetime, and it is not going to be eternal. So by the arrangement of time, this relationship exists only in the present, and one should not lament for the temporary relationships. This is what Narada Muni explained to Chitraketu and his family. The entire, what to talk about the relationship, the entire cosmic manifestation is temporary. Although not unreal, it is not factual. That means the manifestation is real, but it is temporary, but it is not the ultimate truth. Then they say that by the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything created in the material world is transient. And by a temporary arrangement, a father begets a child, or a living entity becomes the father, child of a so-called father. So this father and son relationship in this material world is only a temporary arrangement made by the Supreme Lord. Neither the father nor the son exist independently. Then, as the king listened to the great sages, he was relieved of his false lamentation, and he inquired about their identity. Then the great sages presented who they were and instructed that all the sufferings are due to the bodily conception of life. And when one understands his spiritual identity and surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes actually happy. So all these lamentation that we have is to a temporary attachment we develop to these relationships. But when one surrenders to a Supreme Lord, then one becomes free from these lamentation and becomes happy. So self-realization means spiritual realization of one's relationship with Krishna. Everyone, irrespective of father or son or sisters, brothers, children, etc., have got only one identity, that they are all related to Krishna. And that realization ends one miserable material life. The Chaitanya Bhagavat also, there is a very nice example of how Mother Sachi and Father Jagannath Mishra, they were lamenting on Vishwarupa, who left his home. Now, Vishwarupa was the elder son to them, and the child Nimai was the younger one. So this Vishwarupa actually had a lot of association with devotees of the Lord. And he would go wherever there was Krishna Katha being discussed in the form of Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. So this Advaita Acharya, he and his other Vaishnava devotees were always conducting this Shravanam Kirtanam in their house. And normally many devotees would accompany them for this Kirtanam. So Vishwarapa was actually, he used to go to Advaita Acharya house, and generally he used to see that people were becoming very, very materialistic at that time. And he said that I do not like to see the sinful faces of people of this materialistic society. So I will go and live in the forest. So every day, Vishwarupa would go to the Ganga river, take bath, and then he would visit this Advaita Acharya's house. And Advaita Acharya also, he would roar in delight when he sees Vishwarupa. And he would explain, Vishwarupa would explain the essence of all scriptures and the process of devotional service to Krishna. So one day, Mother Sachi had completed her cooking when Vishwarupa was in Advaita Acharya's house. So he told Vishwambara, the younger child, to bring his elder brother to come and eat. So hearing this instruction, Vishwambara went to Advaita Acharya's house to bring his brother. So there he saw a lot of devotees discussing nice topics about Krishna Katha. So Gaurasundara himself, who is none other than Krishna himself, he was felt very, very satisfied that he was hearing the glories of Lord Krishna, and he was also captivated by hearing them. So then he told his elder brother, brother, come to eat, mother is calling you. So he caught hold of Vishwarupa's dhoti and they together went back home. So at that time, Advaita Acharya thought that this young boy is certainly not an ordinary mundane personality. I cannot fully determine what is the nature of this boy. This way, Advaita Acharya told all the devotees. So Vishwarupa also returned home, and then again after having his meals, he went back to Advaita Acharya's house. Now, Vishwarupa had already had no attraction for this material world. He always experienced joy, spiritual excitement, only in singing the glories of the Lord. So in his own house, Vishwarupa spent all the time in Vishnu Katha. And he was always there in the Vishnu Griha. You know, every house they have a Vishnu Griha where they worship the Lord in the form of Shaligram Shila. He would always sit there and worship the Lord. And he was not very particular in terms of familial dealings and all those things. Now, his parents were very eager to get him married. They thought that once he gets married, he'll be here at home. But the moment when he heard of their parents planning to get him married, he became very, very sad. He only thought that I will leave my family and go to the forest. So Vishwarupa actually took the renounced order of sannyasa within a very few days' time, with the name Shankararanya, which would become famous throughout this devotee set upon the eternal path. The moment Vishwarupa left his home, the hearts of both Sachimata and mother and father Jagannath Mishra, they both were in intense grief. So they were all in extreme lamentation, just like Mother Devotee that is mentioned here. And young child, Vishwambara also, he could not bear the separation of his brother and fell unconscious. So, and not only that, even Advaita Acharya and other devotees also would shed a lot of tears because of the unbearable separation from them. Now, the entire town of Nadia, they were all in distress when they heard the news of this boy's sannyasa. So at that time, Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra would all the time followed, Vishwarupa, 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 please come back home. So as over a period of time, it so happened that Nimai, who was Vishwambara, who was a younger son, they thought that now he would be there at home and relieve them of all the suffering and lamentation. So they thought that he will eliminate all our suffering, and so forth. The time passed on. Now, what happened was, Nimai actually, or Vishwambara, he started taking interest in discussing Krishna Katha. And he became a very great scholar. And what happened was that over a period of time, it so happened that the parents realized that this child also is taking a lot of interest in Krishna Katha. So we should see that he does not leave his home here. He should always be at home. And we should leave everything to the Lord himself. And every time when Gaurasundara would meet his friends, they always left for Advaita Acharya's house. They would again go to Advaita Acharya's house, and um, his parents realized the moment that Vishwarupa went to Advaita Acharya's house, he was carried away by the glories of Krishna Katha and he took sannyas. And the same thing might happen to this young child Nimai also when he goes to Advaita Acharya's house. So they all try to see that uh, while studying books, they didn't leave this Nimai for even a moment. Nimai mastered all the scriptures over in a very short time and became a great scholar. So the parents thought that they are truly blessed with this child. And over a period of time, uh, Sachi Mata was very happy seeing wonderful qualities of this Nimai. They thought that this Nimai will remain involved in household life. So Vishnu, knowing this essence of scriptures, etc., Nimai also learned all the scriptures and he became very scholarly. So when they thought that Nimai is the only person that they can depend on, a sudden thought came that Sachimata thought, how will he maintain his life if he remains illiterate and remains all the time at home? Nobody will give a daughter in marriage to this an illiterate person. So Jagannath Mishra would reply, surely you are you are great daughter of a Brahmin. You should know that Lord Krishna, who is everyone's protector, has created everything and he will give and take whatever is required. Do not bother yourself thinking about your son's maintenance. I can assure you that Lord Krishna will look after him. So we all have Lord Krishna as our shelter and he will take care of this Nimai. So one day, Father Jagannath Mishra told his Nimai, he said, Nimai, I promise you that from today you are relieved of all studies. You may do as you like, whatever you desire, my son, I am ready to provide. But just stay in the house and become satisfied. Then thereafter we see that over a period of time, Nimai took association of devotees and thereafter he also exhibited its pastimes. And Nityananda Prabhu was also very close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at some point of time, he started traveling, and started preaching the glories of the Lord. And at one point of time, he took sannyas. And the same thing happened that Vishwarupa left home, took sannyas and left home. And in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he took sannyas and he became Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That same separation, whatever is mentioned here about Mother Devahuti feeling separation from the Lord, same thing Mother Sachi also felt when she felt separation because the second son also left. So this is how parents, when they develop uh, uh, relationship with their child, with the supreme as the supreme personality of Godhead, they feel a lot of separation from that, for which they lament. Some examples in Srimad Bhagavatam, which we will go through, where there is a mention of the other type of relationship which can bound one in this material world. One example of detachment is King Bharata. It is said that Bharata was such a great soul that he was attached to the lotus feet of Krishna. He gave up everything. He had a very nice, he was ruling the whole world. But at some point of time, he gave up everything and he gave up his affection for his children, society, everything, and all his opulence also. He was actually so fortunate that the goddess of fortune was pleased to give him everything in the form of material opulence, but he never accepted any of these material opulences. So Sukadeva Goswami mentions that this behavior of King Bharata was very, very high. He says, anyone whose heart is attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudana, does not care even for a liberation which is aspired by many great sages, what to speak of material opulence. So many times sages aspire for liberation. Liberation means getting freedom from this material world. But that liberation does not entail or does not mean one is situated in his constitutional position. In liberation, many can even enter Brahma Jyoti, which is the glowing effulgence of the covering the Supreme Lord. But when one enters this Brahma Jyoti, he loses his identity and he does not become situated in his constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. As a result, without any activity, he suffers there and again comes back to this material world. There's a very little chance of one going up into the spiritual world from liberation stage. But the great sages still aspire for liberation because they think that material world is full of distress. But a devotee of the Lord does not even desire for liberation. He always wants to be engaged in the service of the Lord. So, but one becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, he automatically develops detachment for everything that is material. The senses are actually such that they always desire sense enjoyment. But when a devotee develops transcendental love for Krishna, the senses are no longer attracted by material desires. And this state of mind is what is called detachment. And this Bharat Maharaja was one example. And this Bharata was so much attracted by the lotus feet of Krishna that even in his youthful life, he gave up all attachment to family, children, etc. This is a typical example of developing detachment. Now, this means that detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself aloof from apart from all the allurements of attachment. See, what happens in this material world is that many material opulences come to everyone in this material world, particularly one takes up to devotion service, one starts getting a lot of opulences. But what happens is that this is a sort of an allurement from Maya, nothing but Maya, that people sometimes get carried away by that. So, but even in the presence of such allurements, if one can remain unattracted by these allurements, then he is actually detached. That means many times people might artificially say, I am renounced and I don't want to use anything for material enjoyment. But what happens is that that material attachment remains inside in the heart and carries away this person. But on the other hand, if one utilizes all these material opulences in the service of Krishna, actually he becomes unattracted by these material attachments, and that is what is called real detachment. Then there's mentioned that in the beginning, of course, a neophyte devotee must try to keep himself apart from all kinds of alluring attachment. But the real position of a mature devotee is that even in the presence of all these, he is not at all attracted, which is really called the real detachment. There is another point mentioned in this purport that every woman can qualify herself as much as Devahuti and then can also have the Supreme Godhead as her son. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can appear as the son of Devahuti, he can also appear as the son of any other woman, provided that woman is qualified. That means that the Lord can appear as a son to anyone if they sincerely take up serving the Lord in that mood of relationship as a mother. Then the Lord can appear as their son even to themselves also, provided the woman becomes qualified. So we all have an eternal relationship with the Lord. And if you are able to serve the Lord, that rasa becomes automatically established by the mercy of a spiritual master. And when one serves in that mood and one becomes free from the entangle in this material world and goes back to the spiritual world, and there one is established in that relationship. If one is sincere in the relationship of service to Krishna as an elderly person, that relationship is established again on revival in the spiritual world, and that service continues in the spiritual world. For example, even in the material, even when Krishna was here, his spiritual master Sandipani Muni was very eagerly. They would Krishna and Balaram would go to collect wood from the forest. Though they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they stayed in the ashram of Sandipani Muni. But then many times they would be late, and Sandipani would be very eager, seeing that they have not come on time. So this was a position of him as a spiritual master of both Krishna and Balaram. So if one can get the Supreme Lord as a son, one has the benefit of having a nice son in this world And at the same time, at the end of this lifetime, one gets promoted to the spiritual world, and uh, they have the opportunity being the Lord face to face as an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. If anybody has got any questions or any comments, they can ask me for the next couple of minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dantra Pranam Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Dantra Pranam Prabhuji. Yeah, thanks for the very good class, Prabhuji, very excellent class, Prabhuji.
Thanks.
Prabhu, like I have a slight please correct me. Like
Yes.
as Arjuna, when he was with Krishna, Krishna instructed him the whole Bhagavad Gita. Then when he lost his son Abhimanyu, he was also very attached to, and he started weeping and other things like that.
Yes.
So being Arjuna with Krishna, also he was attached, like irrespective of knowing Bhagavad Gita, then realizing Bhagavad Gita, but still he was so much attached. So what to talk about our people, Prabhu? So how can we have that detachment? Like you can help us.
If you look at the verse today itself, the translation clearly states Mother Devahuti was self-realized and she knew the truth of life and death. So in the case of Arjuna, he had a friendly relationship with Krishna. Here, Mother Devahuti had a relationship with Kapil Dev as her mother and son. So, and she clearly mentioned that she was also self-realized. The one thing that we must understand is that in this material world, within that short stay of a few years or whatever it is, whatever the span may be, material world is so created that we develop attachment to our kith and kin. And it is not very easy to give up. But the only way that we can really give up is developing that attachment to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even if for a moment one becomes, one laments for, like the case of Arjuna to Abhimanyu, even if that lamentation happens, it happens on a temporary basis. But over a period of time, one starts to understand, because devotees appear for a higher cause and they disappear also for a higher cause. Devotees don't appear like any other materialistic person in this material world. It's always said that Vaishnavas appear for a higher purpose, and when the purpose is over, they again disappear for a higher purpose. So that is the real understanding. And if one is able to reach to that understanding, then one can realize, yes, whoever has left this body has left for pleasing Krishna or serving the mission of Krishna. That is the real understanding. But still, nevertheless, for conditioned souls like us, it is not very easy. That is why it is said that one must always be associated with the devotees of the Lord. And we see that even the case of King Chitraketu, it was Maharaja, King Chitraketu, though was in lamentation, it is Narad Muni who explained the signs of self-realization, and they made a dead child wake up and explain about the process of self-realization. And the child asked actually King Chitraketu, which son are you talking about? I've had in my birth in so many lifetimes, so many fathers and so many mothers. Which one are you talking about? And then the King Chitraketu realized what is the truth of life. So lamentation also happens, but what happens when we simultaneously, when we have association of devotees of the Lord, we feel that yes, their presence also makes a lot of difference. And over a period of time, we try to understand, yes, devotees have left their bodies for a higher purpose, to serve the mission of the Lord. So this small difference in understanding happens between devotees and non-devotees. Non-devotees don't have the understanding. So what happens is that they lament for some time, but after that, the lamentation also is temporary in nature. But devotees have an understanding, yes, if such an incident has occurred, it has happened by the mercy of the Lord for a higher purpose. Though it's not very easy to achieve, but then we have to come to that stage of understanding.
Yes. So
by Lord's mercy, we have got that child, and by Lord's mercy, He has taken it. That is the only way we can look at it.
Yeah. And Prabhu, like as it said, like one should not have attachment to the
Yes.
family members. So Prabhu, without attachment, how they the love or is like love is there.
Your voice is not
That
clear.
feeling.
Your voice is not clear. I don't know why there is a small break in the voice. Can you repeat the question again? No, it's still not clear. It's still not clear.
Can you hear me?
Can you call me later on my personal line? It's still
Thank
not
you,
clear.
Prabhu.
I'm not. Yes, Mataji.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice class.
Thank you, Mataji. Any questions, Mataji?
No, Prabhu.
Thank you. Prabhu, I could hear Mataji's voice. I think there is something wrong at your end in the network.
It's okay, Prabhu. I'll be in touch with you later. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all very much. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.